Hello, welcome back, everybody. Here's to another episode of Desired Dialogues, the podcast where we dive into all things relationships, sex, as well as mental health. So, today I'm actually going to dive into some core questions about sex, that a lot of people wonder about but may not be comfortable asking about. Such questions like, why do people have sex? How much is enough sex? And what does it even mean to have a satisfying sex life? So we're going to tackle these topics, and it's going to be based upon the latest research and insights from sex therapists, psychologists, and I'm going to break down a bunch of myths that surround everything from emotional well-being and frequency. So I got you covered. Buckle up. Here we go, my friends. Let's start with the basics, all right? Why do people actually have sex? It's not just about reproduction or love. I love research, so I'll tell you that much. So research actually has shown that people engage in sex for a wide range of reasons. Seeking pleasure, relieving stress, boosting self-esteem, improving social status, yeah, you heard me, and even to ensure the stability of the relationship. So some may, also do it to feel close to the partners. Some even, do it to gain specific advantage in life because orgasms are super, super good for your health. So the question really becomes, what are your personal reasons for having sex? And how do those shape your relationship as a whole? So, first question I get a lot. How much sex is normal? Well, that's a big question, and it really plagues a lot of us because there really is not a cut and paste answer here. So the General Social Survey tells us that married couples, on average, have sex 58 times a year. But people in their 20s have sex an average of 111 times annually. So of course those numbers are going to fluctuate with age, and sex therapists note that there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Satisfaction is key. That's what I'm going to say to that. All right? If you're happy with that frequency, then there's no reason to really compare it to anybody else's. But if you feel a lack of desire, it's definitely worth checking in on, wondering what's going on and what sex does do for you so you can look at it in a more positive light. And also really, if we do choose to work together, these are the things I do. It's creating a sex life that you actually want to participate in. Another question I get, all right, how long should sex last? Well, many people believe the longer the better, but research actually finds that the average penetration time is about 3 to 5 minutes. So the real answer, hey, as long as both partners are enjoying it, I wouldn't stress over it. So no need to meet some, imagined standard here. What matters really is kind of that you're both present and satisfied. And for me, when it comes to sex, I'm good with 45 minutes max. All right. I mean, you get to an age where it's just okay, man, I got stuff to do. But that time was there to be present with your partner, really tap into pleasure, forget the outside world, and really just be there with your body and allow yourself to receive that pleasure. But for me, after 45 minutes, I'm all right, my back's starting to hurt, when you get to a little bit of that older 30s, you're okay, we need more lube and stuff. So next question, all right, is sex good for you? Well, you might be surprised to learn that having sex can actually help you live longer. So more sex for you. Studies actually show that people who tend to have sex more frequently tend to have overall better physical health because that you get that reduced stress and also improved immune function. So did you know that sex and orgasms actually help boost your immunity? Oh my gosh. So there's really not these just the physical benefits, but which is incredible. Orgasms as a whole, I did an entire episode about what happens, with the science behind orgasms and all the incredible benefits for your physical body. But, there's also this positive outlook on life when you have this really emotional connection to your sex life and that of if you have a partner as well. So let's dive into those post-sex mood boosts. They're not really just in your head. They're totally backed by science. So let's talk about how sex impacts your mental health as well as work. So research suggests that people who have sex tend to feel happier and more fulfilled afterward. You might experience that boost in your sense of meaning, your well-being. But did you know that sex can actually help you at work? People who had sex the night before reported feeling more positive, engaged, and productive at work. It's a win-win. Let's talk about some preferences, right? So not everybody's going to feel the same way about sex, which is what makes it so beautiful, as we are such a intricate and different pool of people that all have, same reproductive organs, right? But we have all these preferences. And I really think these, preferences can be based on your religious beliefs, your sexual preferences, your personality. For instance, another research showed that women tend to experience more sexual disgust than men, and people with higher openness are less likely to feel disgusted by certain sexual practices. So when it comes to sexual disgust, I really think that is a lot of sexual shame that is put onto you by society, a lot of standards put on by religions, what is right, what is wrong, what is dirty, and it's I really want you to think about, okay, what are your boundaries? Where do you see sexual disgust? And where do you think that may have come from? Is that something you intrinsically believe, or was that something handed to you? And how do you communicate these, these boundaries, these things that may turn you off to your partner to maybe look into it together? I also want you to think about too, what about your first sexual experience? All right, when we think about these, notice how much that can shape your view of sex moving forward. Here's another study. Yes, studies show that people who engage in sex later tend to report more positive experiences, while those who start earlier, before age 15, I'll say, often have higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even drug use. So how can we create better experiences for ourselves and others when it comes to sexual debut, right? It's another question I have here a lot. Do people actually need sex? A lot of people can be content, especially if sex just does not make their priority list, which happens a lot more than you think. Something that is very important to note: 1 out of 2 women experience sexual difficulties or irregularities, dysfunction, and it turns out, no, those people don't necessarily need it, right? It's people can absolutely live fulfilling lives without sex, but I want you to look at where the dysfunction may be, right? And if that's leading it to you not wanting to have it, or if there's something causing it, or if you're just content, right? What is going to satisfy you? That's a point. This satisfying sex life is really often linked to feeling positive about life. While you don't need sex, it can definitely contribute to psychological well-being, A question for you, my friends, is how do you navigate what works best for you in your life? That is a completely personal question with a personal, unique answer. All right, another question. Can people live without sex? Approximately 1% of the population claims to be asexual. When you're asexual, this is feeling no desire to have sex, you have no sexual attraction to others of any gender. Asexuality was actually once considered a mental disorder. It isn't any longer. A lot of researchers suggest that it should be viewed as its own sexual orientation, which I highly recommend as well. I would have to agree with that. So some asexuals are in committed relationships. I know a few who are, and they may have sex to make their partner happy, and others, are in fulfilling non-sexual relationships. So it's, most report that their greatest challenge is a stigma that, asexuality carries, with other people. In conclusion, my friends, we kind of went over quite a bit. It's clear that sex is just kind of more than this physical act. It's really tied to our emotional well-being, the dynamics of your relationship, and even our productivity and work. So whether you're in a relationship, you're single, or somewhere in between, I really just want you to remember, what matters most is finding what works for you, right? I'm glad that we were able to bust the myths, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review, share it with some friends. There's so many more resources within my podcast. Any questions that you have about mental health, sex, any questions, any myths, we can bust them together. So my friends, I want you to think about, what matters most to you. What does sex mean to you? And how do you want to define it? How does it take precedent in your life? And until next time, my friends, be well, take care of each other, and don't forget to masturbate. Oh, it boosts your immunity, my friends. Orgasms are your best friend. An orgasm a day keeps the doctor away. All right, over and out. Coach Lauren. Talk next time.